So 33 years later, the Blazers win the draft lottery in 2007, despite having the sixth best odds, and this is a pretty good draft. The year before that, the Blazers had an absolute home run draft in 2006. They got LaMarcus Aldridge and Brandon Roy in the same draft, which I would say is probably one of the best single draft classes a team has ever had. You talk about a Luka and Jalen Brunson. I would say that's one. Westbrook and Serge Ibaka, that's a good one. But number one pick in the 2007 draft, and the top two options are clear. You got Greg Oden and Kevin Durant. And people look back now and say that, it was a split. Obviously you look at now and Durant is who he is, and Oden's career panned out how it was. But Oden was the consensus number one player. There really wasn't that big of an argument. What do you know about Greg Oden? Did you ever play against him?
I didn't, but I followed him when he was at Ohio State. You like to follow the bigs, especially when you're no freaky when you're a big guy, and you like to see how the position is progressing, and you always hope that it flourishes. Whatever position you play in the league, you all like to see that position doing well. But I thought Greg Oden was seemed to be NBA ready.
7 feet tall. 280, 7'2" wingspan, 33-inch vertical.
Everything. He was slapping shit up against the glass. You know what I mean? He had good hands. He was moving fairly well. Remember, he was running the court. He played at a high level, played with Michael Conley. Those teams were good. They were entertaining to watch. They seemed like, high-level NCAA. And he played against the best competition in the Big Ten. So, yeah, I didn't have a problem with Greg Oden. I don't think that – I liked KD at the time as well. But again, that was not the prevailing thing. I think that was we were still going off of what we need position wise.
And big men. I mean, you got this is Yao Ming. You have Dwight Howard emerging.
Facts.
You got Ben Wallace and
you got Bynum's running around.
You got Bynum's running around.
Yep.
Shaq is fresh off the championship.
Yep.
And on the flip side, KD, he averaged 25 and 11 as a freshman at Texas on pretty much 50, 40, 90 splits. How tall is KD? Is he 7 feet tall? 6'11"?
Basically.
Bomani Jones said that at the time, the last big guy to hit the draft anywhere close to being as refined a perimeter scorer as Durant was Glenn Robinson in 1994. However, Durant couldn't put up 185 a single time at the draft combine.
Yeah, I remember that whole thing. But
we know what his legs look like, and there's legitimate questions being asked about how his body would translate to the pros. But Portland does take Oden number one in the draft, and just months after the draft, he has his first of 3 microfracture knee surgeries, which me and you have talked about on this podcast. And Greg Oden really seemed like a good guy, too. Kevin Pritchard, who was the GM at the time, after the first microfracture surgery, he said, Greg looked at me as he was coming out of his surgery, and he and his mom, Zoe, probably said sorry about 20 times. I could feel the weight of the world on his shoulders. And as a leader and as leaders of this organization, my first thought was just how lucky we were to have a guy that cares about the organization that much. We picked the right kid. He cares about this organization. And I can't overemphasize how bad he felt. And not because he had to go through the rehab and all that, but because he felt like he let us down. And he hasn't let us down at all.
I mean, it's a guy who trusted his evaluators. That's what I'm saying. He trusted his evaluators. Greg gave him proof in the pudding that this was the right guy, right? You're trusting that the number one pick really wants to play basketball and do right by your city, your organization. That was confirmed by, that interaction right there. This is, I guess this is, again, the third we talked about is injury, culpability on the front office, versus what the rest of that draft did after him. And I think, like I said, with him, it was like a perfect storm. Everything that seems to happen in Portland, for better or worse, seems like a perfect storm. From Brandon Roy injuries to these two, you know what I mean? It's I know that I think we have to consider that when you're making a decision as an organization, if you find something, you're probably thinking that your training staff or your doctor that you're probably consulting with them, and they're thinking, that's something we can take care of. We can manage that. Yeah, he has a so-and-so, but once we get him in on the program, do the strength and put him on the program, it'll be fine. Those are everybody thinking in the best way possible. Their expertise can help this player be the best version that the evaluator said he can do. But in these cases, I think in Portland, as it pertains, now that I think about it, B. Roy, Bill Walton, Greg Oden, these are maybe just unfortunate things that happen, you know what I mean, when you should have went right, but you went left. I don't know.
And the crazy thing about Oden, too, is that when he was healthy, they were really good.
He'd be balling.
Balling in the 62 games that LaMarcus Aldridge, Brandon Roy, and Oden played together, they had a 50-12 record.
I would say that he helped LA be LA. He allowed LA to float freely and explore the mid-range game because Greg Oden had everything else, He had everything on. He was eating the block up. Dunker spot, jump hook. I believe he has some semblance of a jump shot. If not reliable, at least to be considered as a threat to make you come out a little bit, or he would knock a couple down here and there, right? He could put it on the floor at least one bounce before his injury and get to the front of the rim. These are the type of things, as a big that are serviceable as a center per se when you got a power forward like LaMarcus Aldridge who's exploring the mid-range game.
He was a good free throw shooter. He shot 76% from the line. Do you think that that's a good indicator of if a big man can actually shoot? Because some people look at that. They look at their free throw percentage. They look at the stroke. But if he progressed, I mean, all right.
He's Rudy Gobert-ish. If he stays healthy.
He has more game than Rudy Gobert.
But you see what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But that type of skill set where his offense isn't like predicated on him scoring 20 points. It's 10 to 15 with the rebounds and the block play.
The really messed up thing about Oden is the microfracture thing, and I feel like we've talked about this like 3 times, but he had 3 microfracture surgeries in under 5 years. And again, for those of you that are listening or watching for the first time, microfracture was a surgery that ended the careers of guys like Penny Hardaway, Tracy McGrady,
Jamal
Mashburn, Chris Webber. It was a supposedly innovative surgery where they drilled a hole in your kneecap to pool blood in the knee, which supposedly grew cartilage, but it actually didn't do that at all. Oden had 3 microfracture surgeries in 5 years. One of those was just supposed to be a minor cleanup, but the doctor was in there and said, you know what, fuck it, let's just give this guy another microfracture. So you have a guy that supposedly has these routine knee procedures, but really medicine is kind of just failing him. The training staff is failing him. And in 2016, he did this interview on Outside the Lines where he says, I'll be remembered as the biggest bust in NBA history.
Yeah, but see, that's what I'm saying, Dylan. He got to carry that tag, and that just ain't his cross to bear, forgive me the lack of a better term, or his burden or his boulder that he's got to push. That's unfair to that young man. Right, we just heard what type of young man he was after the microfracture procedure, but like that's what I mean. Like, what is that? That's cool for media and for barbershop talk, I guess, to use that word bust. But think of that burden he has to carry with him thinking of himself as the biggest bust in NBA history when it was really kind of out of his hands. I could see if he balloons up to 500 pounds. Like some of the other first picks and other people have, and it really didn't look like it there. But when I watched him play, it looked like he cared, and he just couldn't overcome some of his injuries.